Let's talk guns now.
A little bit of freedom here.
The Gun Show.
Well, we're trying.
The First Amendment, freedom of speech and choice.
This is The Gun Show, where real gun talk happens. Anything goes. The Gun Show, sponsored by Vintage Arms of Illinois. Live and local on AM 1050 WLIP.
Back my bullet. Put 'em back where they belong. Ain't fooling around 'cause I've done had my fun. Ain't gonna see no more damage done. Give me back my bullet.
Good morning and welcome to the Gun Show on AM 1050 WLIP, Southern Wisconsin and Northern Lake County's only dedicated gun talk show, sponsored by Vintage Arms of Illinois. And today we've been left alone in the studio. Looks like George and Mike have run off on us to Colorado this week. And I have two guest hosts here today. We've got Kurt Quist, who is our producer and production manager. He's here with us. How you doing, Kurt?
I'm doing good, Clint. How are you doing?
I'm still here. And we've also got John Hanley from Task Force Century Training. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great, Clint. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you can't wave, John. We're on the radio. Nobody can see you. So, everybody get their coffee this morning?
No coffee for me.
No coffee for
Nice,
you.
Good sleep and be ready to rumble.
So, I hear George and Mike drove to Denver. Is that right, Kurt?
That's correct.
And as cheap as George is, turned out they could only swing a single-bed motel just outside of Denver, a little place called the Lonesome Dove. So we've got a live feed from there this morning, and in a few minutes we're going to tune in and see what they're doing. But first, let's talk to John Hanley over here. John, how you doing?
Doing great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I see you're all dressed up.
Yeah, we got a class this morning at 9 o'clock at 5 Star Firearms.
Yeah. So you're a concealed carry instructor, correct?
That's correct.
How long you been doing this?
I'd guess 7 to 10 years, somewhere up in there.
Yeah.
Off and on.
You enjoy it then?
Oh, absolutely love it. It's a great time.
You're a great speaker too. You have the gift to gab, so
It does fill the extra time.
it does.
Yeah.
It does. That's kind of why I brought you in here today. I was hoping you could fill all the gaps for us, because usually it's Mike. He can go on and on and on. So
All right, so just drone on and on and on. That'll do it?
no.
No, okay.
All right. Anyways, so Kurt's telling me we got live feed from their hotel room this morning. Is that correct?
That's right. We got a live feed.
Well, real quick, I guess we could tune in to Mike and George and see what they got going on this morning.
Why did you kiss my ear? Why are you holding my hand? Where's your other hand? Between two pillows. Those aren't pillows.
See that Bears game last week? Yeah, hell of a game. Bears got a great team this year. They're going to go all the way.
Wow. All right, thanks for cutting that off. We're going to let them head to brunch, and we'll get back to them in the second half, I guess. They're supposed to call in, so I'm guessing they didn't know the audio was on there, huh?
Yeah, and my dad was flustered because he doesn't
Yeah.
watch football. So
Yeah,
no.
definitely. Wow. All right, so he's got that going for him, huh? Kurt, tell us a little bit about yourself. How old are you, and what are you doing in life right now?
Right now, so I'm 23 years old. I'm a student at the University of Wisconsin Parkside. I graduate this December with a major in communication. Other than that, I've been doing this radio production, pressing the buttons right sometimes, and now I'm getting some multitasking and talking as well. I also am very, interested and passionate about motorsports and racing, so I'm trying to pursue a career in that. And pretty much, other than that, just got some summer to wrap up and some school to finish up and go from there.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. So that's how he ended up being our production manager, and he's doing a great job. So, with that being said, I had a couple questions for John here. I'm going to do just a quick, brief interview, and anybody who would like to call in and has a question about concealed carry, you're more than welcome to do that. Just know that we, myself, John, anybody here, we're not attorneys, so we're not here to answer legal questions, but any concealed carry, Wisconsin, Illinois questions you might have, feel free to call in and ask John anything. So,
Well, not quite anything, but yeah.
Concealed carry related, anyhow. So, what do you like most about teaching these classes? Because I know you teach your classes at Five Star Firearms, and our classes are most commonly full. So, I mean, what do you like most about doing it?
It's hard to say. I like introducing people to the sport of shooting. So a lot of times we'll get military in that come in. They don't need the full 16 hours. One of the things that we require at Task Force Sentry is they take the full 16-hour class for the Illinois permit. And I think it's important. I like making sure people get the correct information. Enjoy interacting with people, getting all the different past, what their past is, their experiences are. You never know what you're going to hear from a student.
Yeah, and, the one thing you mentioned is new shooters. I don't know if there's anything I like more than introducing a new shooter to the sport, and nowadays it's harder to get new shooters into the range, so concealed carry is one of those great ways we can bring people in and introduce them, and when they go through qualification and stuff, a lot of the times after the class, do you see that a lot of people like to extend their training and their shooting capabilities?
Oh, absolutely. People come in, they take their first couple classes. After their first couple classes or their first class, they're really into it. They come into the store, they talk to me, they want to know just about everything you can find out about guns. It's really nice. They're like sponges,
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, and it's nice to see how intrigued some people are, because a lot of people who've never shot a firearm before, been out on a range, I mean, it's a kind of an exhilarating experience for them, so to speak.
Oh, that it is. I mean, sometimes you get those people that go up to the range the first time, they just start pulling the trigger like they've been doing it their entire life. And then you get the occasional student that just goes up there, you see the hands shaking, they're quivering, it's like, okay, let's work a little bit one-on-one with this person. And usually those end up being one of the better shooters because they're sitting there, they're ready to take advice and listen.
Yeah. And I see we have a caller, so let's hit that phone call and see what they got to say. Good morning, welcome to the Gun Show. You're with Clinton, John, and Kurt. How you doing?
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, CJ. This
Hi.
is Margie from Gurnee.
Hi, Margie. How you doing?
Good. My husband, Al, we just love the show.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, we hope you get more sponsors so you can stay on the air.
We're going to stay on the air anyways, but yeah, it's nice to always have it funded a little bit. So.
Well, my question today is, it's sad about what happened yesterday with down in Texas.
Yeah.
But the question is why all the coverage up here?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And actually, this is going to be one of our topics here this morning, so I'm glad you kind of jumped into this a little bit, because it does bring, well, like you said, it's sad, first of all. But secondly, I mean, these things are publicized for a purpose. And it's
right.
They have an agenda to fill. So anytime there is a school shooting, we don't always hear about it.
Right.
I mean, 20-some kids and adults were shot in Chicago last weekend alone, from Friday till Sunday, and a lot of that's not reported in the news. So
No,
I guess my question
all.
is what makes these lives more important than those other lives? And the thing of it is
Right.
that they use this, or our politicians are using this to publicize and swing things in their advantage. What are your thoughts on it, John?
Well, I mean, obviously it's a tragedy, and you hate to see something like this happen. And they always like to put an emphasis on the fact that it was a gun that did it. And in reality, it's an evil person that does this. It's not the gun. There's usually some kind of drug that these kids are on that affects them.
Exactly.
And it's just not being reported in that direction. They don't talk about what's wrong with these children or what's wrong with these men and women that go in and commit these crimes. But it happens every day. It's been happening since the 1700s was the earliest reported school shooting.
Yeah, since kindergarten, because the teachers didn't want to deal with them. They've been put on these drugs, so that they would sit still. And, so now all of a sudden they're realizing that now these kids have these problems. And
oh, absolutely. When I was in school, I grew up in Louisiana, so it may have been a little different down there. But when I was in school, we started our morning off with recess. Those teachers had us out there running, playing football, whatever, before classes. We took an hour-long lunch. We were out there working and running, Kids today are just stuck in classrooms. They get 15-minute lunch breaks, it seems, and 15 minutes of activity outside.
Yeah, some of them don't even have recess anymore, and that's one of my biggest gripes about school is that, these kids need to be able to get out and burn energy. But like you were saying, one of the bigger things that's not reported are these psychotropic drugs they put their kids on. So, your child's acting out, he's standing up during class. I'd recommend putting him on Ritalin, that'll calm him down and turn him into a, wide-eyed zombie, and he'll just listen, But I think the other part of the problem here is bullying. A lot of these kids that act out like this are either outcast or bullied and quiet. With our shooter yesterday, from what we know now, he was a fairly quiet kid, had no criminal record. He was an honor roll student, but it's the quiet kids, and nobody saw any clear signs of this from what we know now or from what I've read. But it's definitely an epidemic now because when I went to look up school shootings, like John said, the first one was in 1764. And as you scroll through on Wikipedia, which is, whatever they could record in history they have, in 1850, there were 3 school shootings. And moving forward from 2015 to 2018, the statistics here show in 2015 there were 21 school shootings. In 2016 there were 14. In 2017 there were only 9. And so far in 2018 this was our 20th school shooting. So I mean we definitely see a trend here. And when I read the stories about the school shootings that have happened in 2018, it's something as he didn't like his principal, went in and shot him. But we didn't hear about those in the news. I mean, we didn't hear about all 20 of these shootings in the news. So this is a very tragic situation. And, I think something needs to be done about it. But I think the front line is at home.
Right.
I mean, with these kids that are, supposed outcast and things of that nature. I don't know about you, but if my son or daughter were, in that position where they were going to act out, I would know because I talk to them every day. When they get home from school, they don't go to their rooms and sit on their, computers and cell phones. We talk about their day. I see how things are going, and I think that's the big disconnect in today's society is that parents aren't fully engaged with their children. And if they were, they'd be able to help them with certain things like this.
Well, another number their own lives.
Yeah, you mentioned 20 or 22 school shootings so far this year, and that number's kind of actually skewed.
It is.
They say in Alabama, one person was injured in an on-campus apartment building, and that's considered a school shooting.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about the University of Savannah State or whatever in Georgia counted that despite the fact that 2 people were involved were not even students, and that's considered a school shooting. So these are used for political agendas all the time as well.
Absolutely, and that information's altered online all the time in their favor and their advantage. And when I say they and their, I'm talking about, our politicians, because if their comment on it is that if we could just save one life, well, if you could just save one life, you would get to the root of the problem. And firearms are not the problem. They're just a tool that's used. So like with this shooting that happened yesterday in a trailer outside of the school, they were able to find some pressure cookers and pipe bombs and explosive materials from what I'm told. So, I mean, those are pretty devastating things. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay. I'm going to get going. I'll be listening and
Wonderful.
Love your show.
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, take care, guys.
Have a good one. We'll see you.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
So, I mean, with that being said, I mean, Kurt, you're in college. Are you living in the dorm? Have you lived in the dorm before?
I have lived in the dorm when I was going to school in Missouri, and it was never really anything that I thought about.
Nothing that ever really sticks out.
No, but this year, obviously, it's gotten a lot more coverage. It's been more frequent, it seems, and I go to school in Parkside, and I just look around, and I'm like, man, if somebody wanted to do it, it would be so easy. Yeah, there's a sign on the door that says, oh, you can't bring a gun in, but you could just walk in. There's nobody stopping you. The doors aren't locked. There's no, security or anything like that. The classrooms are, for the most part, as far as I know, they are not locked. Anybody could just walk into a classroom. So who's to say that somebody's not going to do it? So it's definitely a fear, I guess, that not necessarily a fear, but something that crosses my mind when I'm on campus.
Looking over your shoulder.
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't say constantly or anything like that. I'd try, I wouldn't want to live in fear or anything like that. But
And here's the thing, nobody expects this. It's just something that happens, and I'm not sure what's going through their heads when they decide to act out in this manner. Some of it's premeditated, and I'm guessing some of these kids go home and they just, they're sick of it, and this is their only way to act out and become, some of them do it to be immortalized, as a show.
And I think that I was actually having a conversation with a buddy yesterday about it, and I was thinking that that's partially why we've seen it more frequent this year is the mass media exposure, and these kids are becoming famous. I mean, that's literally what's happening, and I think that the incidents are starting to breed each other. Then the more that happens, it might become more common, which is why we need to take action and make the schools more secure, in my opinion.
Yeah. And one of the things that has been proposed is putting armed guards in school, and they claim that they don't have the funding to do this. So one of the things Wisconsin did a few weeks ago was they reproposed legislation, and the Republicans tried to fund armed guards in Wisconsin schools through state grants. I don't think that that's such a bad idea. After 9/11, what did we do? We put U.S. Marshals on airplanes, and they were dressed in plain clothes. It's not like you've got some full SWAT dressed police officer sitting on your airplane. You know what I mean? They were in plain clothes. Have we had an incident since? I mean, that kind of fixed the problem, didn't it?
May have, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it stopped it.
We work with a fella down at 5 Stars. He's a retired Lake County sheriff, and one of his ideas is, look, you know what? We're retired. We have our retirement coming in. We pay taxes on our retirement. How about letting us work at these schools as security guards and taking away our taxes? So
Absolutely.
we don't have to pay taxes on it. I mean, that's one great way to get, qualified individuals into schools on a voluntary basis.
Absolutely. And I think we'd be much safer for it. And we've actually seen a few of these armed police officers in school stop some of these tragedies, have we not?
Yeah, it just happened, was it last week or the week before?
And the week before that as well, I believe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we keep hearing about these instances now, just not as, as much as we're hearing about these other stories. So like this Texas shooting, I mean, this is going to be on the front page for a week while they dissect it and investigate it. But the reality of the situation is if you don't have somebody armed in that school, and you're not talking about a job that pays $100,000 or $150,000 a year, we're talking about retirement jobs here, And I think a lot of these police officers would get, and retired military would get a lot of gratification out of knowing that they're there to protect children. They've been doing it for our cities and our country, and it's what they know how to do. So why not let them do what they know how to do best, right?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the thing with the funding is a sad statement because I can't put a value on my children's lives. So, I mean, of all the things they increase our taxes for, and even here in Kenosha County, I just got a letter saying our property taxes were going to go up another $12,000 this year. Brutal. But, with that being said, there's got to be room to fund this in our public schools,
Of course.
And I think our locking the doors and, putting buckets of rocks and things of that nature are just not an effective form of protection for our children,
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And one thing I would say is it doesn't have to be over-the-top extreme security, I don't think. I went to Carmel High School, and you can go back and visit, throughout the semester or whatever. And the process of getting into the school as a visitor is pretty extensive. The doors are locked. They have to let you in with a button or whatever, and then you have to talk to somebody right away, show your ID, get everything like that. So you can't just walk into the school. And going back to kind of what I was saying earlier, it's more tricky with a college campus because kids have different classes throughout different times of the day, so it kind of needs to be more open. So I think it gets more tricky in that area.
Yeah.
But I don't think the security necessarily needs to be over the top extreme. I wouldn't necessarily mind if it was, but simply locking the doors and requiring all visitors, all people coming in at a weird time to go through some sort of extensive process to actually get into the building.
Yeah, and a lot of these schools are locked during the day, and there's always got to be a way in and out, obviously. But I think the question is who's there to protect that opening, I guess, the door, so to speak.
Well, you can't legislate evil and you can't legislate stupid.
You can't.
So all these steps that we can take, we're going to have windows. We don't want to lock our children into a school with, just brick walls, no windows, no light except for,
right,
electricity.
Right.
We have to start paying attention to the society. The Texas shooter that just happened this week, yesterday, he was already addressed as a loner. This kid wore a trench coat to high school every single day. Texas is pretty warm, I'm going to imagine, compared to Wisconsin.
Can't imagine a leather trench coat to be too comfortable.
No, so being aware of people's surroundings, and if we have these retired law enforcement, retired military that have spent their lifetimes as part of their careers, paying attention to this sort of behavior, maybe they'll notice it. Maybe they'll take the kid aside and start talking to him, and that could solve some of these problems. At the end of the day, we have parents that are both working jobs. This isn't the 50s. It isn't the 40s. Yeah. Both parents are out working at jobs. Kids are home alone. Kids are, by themselves most of the time now, it seems.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing here is identifying it.
Yeah.
Talk to your kids when you get home. See what they're doing. See how their day went. If my kid went from being, an honor roll student to wearing a trench coat and living a sheltered life and hanging out on Facebook and weird websites all day, I would definitely pay a little extra attention. And most importantly, me being a firearm owner, I would make sure that, these things were not available to him or that he did not have access to them. So like we saw in Dixon, Illinois here with that shooter there, his firearm, according to his mother, she had never owned a firearm. When it came back, it turned out that firearm was registered to her. So, was she passing the buck, pushing the blame?
Yeah.
Where's the accountability here in today's society with things like this? Because you allowed your son to have access to a firearm that was registered to you.
Yeah, this happened in Connecticut. The kid got a hold, and the kid in Connecticut, his mom knew the kid had problems.
Yeah.
She was aware of it, and she didn't keep her guns locked up. The shooting in Texas, he was his dad's shotgun, his dad's .38 Special. And again, the guns were not locked up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have younger children. My firearms are always locked up. If they're out, it's because I'm cleaning them, but they're unloaded, and children don't have access to them. But one of the benefits I have is that both of my kids have grown up around firearms their entire life, and basically don't have a whole lot of interest in it. They don't look at it as something new and exciting, where a lot of these kids, who haven't been exposed to firearms or the sport of shooting, when they find things like this at a younger age, become very curious about it. But unfortunately, these other kids that are older, like this gentleman in Texas, had a purpose, and
Absolutely. When I was young, my mom, I said I grew up in Louisiana. My mom, single mom, 2 kids. We lived out in the country. She had guns in the house. The first thing she did, I think I was 7, 8 years old, is she took me outside. She took the curiosity away from me with firearms. She taught me how to use them. She taught me to shoot at things. And my mom got creative. She didn't just put a piece of paper up for me to shoot at that put a little hole in it. She put up grapefruit. She put up watermelon. She, whatever she could find for us to shoot so we could see what that round was going to do. I started hunting when I was 11 years old, 12 years old. I was carrying a shotgun and a rifle. We carried guns to school in our cars. We didn't think about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I spent most of my summers growing up on a dairy farm up in Seymour, Wisconsin, and same thing. I think there was a rifle behind the kitchen door, and there was another rifle out in the machine shed, and you just didn't touch it unless, you were given permission to, but
one of those
you would have been beaten within an inch of your life to start off with, and that's another part of the problem is, parents have been restrained from disciplining their children in certain ways. And I'm not condoning or saying it's good to beat your kids, but John, I'm guessing you grew up in a similar fashion as me, and it only took 1 or 2 shots, right?
Yeah, that's about it. That's usually about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I can honestly tell you, I remember the first time my grandma told me to go cut a switch, and boy, hey.
Yeah, you went and got that real skinny one that was whippy?
The shortest one you could find.
Yeah, not good.
You didn't want her to go cut one. But we're going to head off to break here real quick, and when we get back, we'll have some more intellectual gun conversation.
Let's talk guns now.
A little bit of freedom here.
This is The Gun Show, where real gun talk happens. Anything goes. The Gun Show, sponsored by Vintage Arms of Illinois. Live and local on AM 1050 WLIP.
And welcome back to the Gun Show on AM 1050 WLIP, Southern Kenosha and Northern Lake County's only dedicated firearms talk show. We're back, and we still haven't heard from George and Mike, so I'm guessing they're finishing up brunch. But, John, you know George.
Yeah, absolutely.
Has he bailed us out a few times?
That he has.
In an automotive sense?
Yes.
Yeah, why don't you give George's plug real quick?
Dukas Automotive at 2225 North Lewis Avenue in Zion, Illinois. Does a great job. I mean, I don't want to throw this out there and throw George under the bus too much, but he actually comes to my work and picks my vehicle up to get the oil changed. It's a little bit of personalized service, but
wow. But you also have his favorite thing. You sell him firearms, correct?
I sell him guns.
Yeah. George loves his firearms. Anybody who knows George knows that his true passion is collecting old firearms. I mean, what's the approximate age range of his firearms that he likes?
I mean, it's hard to say. Everything's typically over 100 years old. I mean, he likes some of the newer stuff, too. I've sold him and his wife a few newer firearms as well, but George's passion is the older stuff. The older Winchesters, the older Colts. I mean, George's favorite line when he walks into the store, when I tell him, hey, George, I got a new Colt in today, he comes running in and he goes, is there a box?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. So they got a box with it and papers, It's just not worth as much without the box and papers.
Yeah.
So, but, like I said last week, we know George likes to reminisce and collect things from his childhood, so the 100-plus works for him. But there you have it. Dukas Automotive. Need your oil change, radiator fluid flushed? Stop down, see George. And actually, George is never there, so you're going to see somebody else.
George is usually at 5-star.
Yeah, he usually is. He's at 5-star. The rest of his crew's down there doing his dirty work.
Yeah,
so.
Typically you can look at the clock. Typically you don't have to look at the clock. When it gets to around 5 o'clock, 5:15, that's when George walks in. It's like, 3 more hours of work to go.
Yeah, that's about it, too, right? So, with that being said, let's get back to what we were talking about before, John, here real quick. Like I said, we grew up in different times, and nowadays I think there's a huge lack of accountability in today's society. Growing up, when you got in trouble at the neighbor's house, sometimes the neighbor took to you, and that was never any good because you knew when you got home, mom and dad were going to take to you as well.
Oh, absolutely. When I was in school, I don't know what it was like up here, but when I was in school, our teachers had paddles. I mean, literally, you got paddled at school. And the worst thing for me was my principal lived 2 houses down. So I would get home on the bus, and my principal's already home at this point and has already told my mom.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it only happened once or twice. So it looks like we got a couple callers here. Let's take our first caller. Hello, and welcome to the Gun Show.
Good morning. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. This is Chuck from Kenosha.
Chuck, how's it going?
Good, Clinton. How are you?
Good.
All right. Hey, I got a question.
Awesome.
Earlier you were talking about somebody's gun being registered.
Uh-huh.
And I hear about that on TV a lot, too, where, the crime scene investigators are talking about this gun was registered to this person and that gun was registered to that person. Can you kind of explain what you mean by registered?
Well, some cities require registration. I believe Highland Park is one of them here locally, correct, John? Is that?
Yeah, I think Highland Park's one of them.
Yeah, and it's only registration of specific firearms. So, like, if you have an AR-15, they require that you register that firearm with the city. I believe Lincolnshire has the same thing as well.
Yeah, the vast majority of the country does not have a registration. Really what happens, you purchase a firearm, we fill out the 4473, and that's as far as it goes. If there's ever a crime committed with that firearm, then the ATF will contact the manufacturer. The manufacturer will say, well, I sold this firearm to Five Star Firearms. They'll contact Five Star Firearms. We pull the form. We go, this person purchased it. And then that person gets a knock on the door.
Yeah, and I guess my comment in regards to the woman earlier is only what I saw in the news. So they said, she claimed she had never bought a firearm before, and it turned out that this AR-15, as the news reported it, was registered to her.
So meaning there was a ATF form with her name on it that said she purchased that firearm?
As far as I know, yes, that firearm was purchased by her.
Or it could be she could have lived in a city that required registration, and
Correct.
then that way they could track it. But not all areas or not all cities
But
or states require that.
I think the bad part about this is when she was confronted with news sources, she said she had never owned a firearm before. Well, all of these things are traceable. So anybody who thinks that, you can go into a gun store, purchase a firearm, and never have it come back to you is insane. I mean, it's going to come back to you. So, the fact that her son used it, whether it was her son or neighbor's son, it doesn't matter. That firearm's still always going to come back to her unless she legally sells it at another firearm store to traceable transactions.
Okay, awesome. You answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, Chuck.
All right, like the show.
Appreciate it.
All right,
have a good
guys.
one. So, I mean, with that being said, again, accountability. There's a huge lack of accountability in today's society. And the point I was trying to make with how we grew up is that, we knew what the consequences were. And I mean, if it happened on a regular basis, you probably weren't that smart of a kid. But, I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, is this the corrective action that they've taken away from parents in today's society that's leading to these things?
Yeah, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but it does seem to be that way. Back in the 80s, there was a big saying, if you hit me, I'm going to write a book, Right. I mean, yeah, and I don't advocate beating your child.
No, absolutely
I don't want
not.
it to sound like that. You can still correct your child. You can still, bend them over your knee, give them a smack on the ass, give them, can I say that? Yeah, well, it worked. You could still correct them and everything. But, one of the things, my mom spanked me one time my entire life. That's all she had to do. I turned around and I looked at my mom. She was crying her eyes out. She never had to do it again.
You made out better than I did. 'Cause it happened on more than one occasion.
My dad was the enforcer. And yeah.
We got another caller here. Hello and welcome to the Gun Show. How you doing?
Hey, how are you doing?
Great. Who is this?
Good.
Where are you from?
This is Dave. I'm from Antioch.
Dave, how's it going this morning?
Doing well. I just thought I'd call in and interject a little bit.
Sure.
To give a bit of my opinion on this situation with school shootings and what have you, and why.
Okay.
One thing that I've noticed in every single one of these school shootings, and I'm sure we'll figure out it's the same case in the latest one, is they all seem to be on some sort of mental health drug, which is, it's interesting to look at. I don't know what we can draw from that, but I think the bigger issue, and you touched on it a bit earlier, is personal responsibility. We grow up in a society now that teaches children that no matter what happens or how bad your life is, it's someone else's fault.
Yeah.
You don't take responsibility for that. And so when these kids are internalizing this and they're having a bad time at school or something like that, it's not their fault. It's not something they can fix.
Correct.
And so the only thing that they can do is lash out at the people around them.
Yeah.
And this, unfortunately, is the way society is set up now. And so I'm not sure,
Absolutely.
aside from restructuring society, how you even fix this mental health issue, because that's really what it is.
Yeah, and the thing of it is that these drugs that the kids are using are being pushed by the schools. So, if your kid's acting out and getting bad grades and can't sit down and toe tapping during the entire class, the teachers will recommend certain drugs for your kid to help him focus and things of that nature. And I'm saying this from experience. I've been told this My son had a thing where he would stand up in the classroom, and she goes, well, he's in the front of the class, and he stands up all the time. And he's got restless leg syndrome, can't sit down. I said, is he getting good grades? Yeah. Well, then put him in the back of the classroom. I'm not going to put him on drugs. You know what I mean? If he's standing up and getting good grades, just put him in the back of the class, you know. And I had a talk with him, and I asked him, you know, what's the deal? I don't know, Dad. I just can't sit down. Well, they also didn't have recess. So, I mean, what do you expect a 10-year-old boy to do when he's stuck in a classroom for 6-7 hours, you know?
Kids are not meant to sit around all day.
Right. It's not how it's supposed to be. So I'm not going to zombify him with some psychotropic drug because some teacher told me I had to put him on it. But I do believe that that's part of the problem.
It is. They said that at least 35 acts of school-related acts of violence, including mass school shootings, have been committed by individuals taking or withdrawing from psychiatric drugs, documented in 27 drug regulatory agency warnings. And these drugs cause mania, psychosis, hostility, aggression, and homicidal ideation. You know, you're talking 172 wounded and 80 killed in these 27 instances that are related specifically to drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's an epidemic. It's the new drug of the century, and I think somebody needs to do something about it. But more importantly, get your kids out and talk to them. You know, see what's going on in their life. That's the important thing. That would prevent a lot of this, you know. And don't always take
a lot of parents don't do what you did. I mean, they rely on society and they rely on the teachers to do the parenting for them.
No.
Yeah, my brother, when he was
parents need to be parents.
Yeah.
When my brother was in grade school, he was acting out and having all kinds of trouble and stuff. My mom, the doctors told him, you know, put him on Ritalin. My mom's like, I don't want to put my child on a drug. So she took sugar away from my brother completely. No sugared cereal before school in the morning, none of that stuff. My brother turned out being a straight A student. I was jealous of him. The kid got, straight A's. He didn't study. He did nothing, you know. I struggled to get C's to make sure I could stay on sports teams.
Yeah, and that's great because she focused on the problem and tried to find a solution instead of pumping him full of, you know, zombie fluid. And that, you know what I mean?
I like that.
Zombie stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's not good, and that's what we've got in today's society. Thanks for calling in. We appreciate the phone call, and give us a call again next week. Have a good day.
Yep, we'll talk later.
We got another caller. Good. Oh, they bail on us? Oh,
it was Mike, so I don't know what he was thinking, but...
Who was it?
It was my dad. I could see the caller ID there, so he's calling back right now. Let's get him.
All right, let's hit him up. Good morning, and welcome to the Gun Show.
Greetings from Lonesome Dove.
Hey, how you guys doing this morning? So I hear you've been listening to the show.
Dove would be better than Brokeback Mountain, don't you think?
Probably, more than likely, much better. So.
Well, it sounds like you didn't roll the Gun Show into the ditch.
Not
You've
yet.
Done a fine job. We've been listening the entire
I'm working
time.
on it. I'm surprised you guys got up this early.
I'm actually a little upset that you did no coverage.
No coverage
of the royal wedding.
The royal wedding. I totally missed it. Is there a wedding I'm supposed to know about?
I got no idea.
Lord.
Anybody? John? Kurt?
And nothing that I cared about.
You turn on the news. It's the only thing on. Evidently, it's world history.
Who's getting married?
Who cares? Somebody in England.
All right.
One of the blue bloods. No, anyway, good show. In all seriousness, I think you're on to something with the over-medication. Anything that affects people mentally that they take antidepressants.
Yeah.
Always in the small print seems to be one of the side effects. Suicide or thoughts of death.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe it isn't worth it.
No. Yeah.
But, so sounds like you're doing a good job. We're out here in Denver, PIO.
Yeah, I looked it up
show.
yesterday. You guys are at the Colorado Collectors Show. Is that right?
Yes, we are. Yes.
So, I mean, is this kind of like this is just mainly vintage firearms again?
Yeah, it's all collector and mostly high-end. And there's some true uber rare, uber high condition. It's the kind of show where they have judging contests too for people that have spent inordinate amount of time and money putting together these huge, very complete collections. They're usually focused on the one that's across from us, the Winchester short rifle.
Yeah.
Another guy has a period barrel making life, and he's making the same barrel continuously.
Wow.
And I mean the old one with the leather belts and stuff.
Yeah, that I would have been into. That's kind of cool.
Right. It screams of ripping fingers off and stuff. It's
I
so
love
cool.
that stuff. Old vintage machinery. Yeah, nothing more brutal or powerful.
Exactly, and there's just loads of knowledge and history here. So it's a nice show. Not disappointed. Their sales have been a little slow, but
So I'm guessing this would be a lot of stuff you'd see like at the Rock Island auction houses and things of that nature then.
I would venture to say 50% of this building has been true Rock Island or Julia or Northeast or Little John. The thing about most collectible guns of super high caliber is they tend to be circular. They come up for auction. They go into a collection. Get sold off, auctioned off, traded off. We did see back at the depth of the economy, and it had more to do with people dying, were lifelong collections that literally came to auction and were sold off bit by bit by bit, and now they're somewhat being reaccumulated. It's kind of interesting to watch. They're like watching currents in an ocean. But if you're into it, it's here.
Awesome.
It's just not a place with new blocks. That's what gun stores are for.
Yeah, someday when I have the time and I don't have to work 7 days a week, I can go do things like this and experience the other side of the gun world, you know.
Well, there's probably a half a dozen shows you should see before you die.
Yeah.
This, Tulsa, Louisville, when it's good, Baltimore, and OCG, Ohio gun collectors are the heavy hitters. The rest are all, just including mine, are just there. But it sounds like you got my kid talking, and at least he showed up on time, I hope.
He did. He's doing a great job. He got here before I did, so.
We all got here before you did, see.
Everybody got here before me today, so.
Well.
And you know what? We just had another caller on the line, Mike. And
yeah,
you blew it.
Your kid just said you blew it. Yeah, the guy hung up. He's like, you know what? This long-winded, and he hung up on
But I
us,
will
so
say, Dad.
Now we got to keep you on the phone.
You should consider calling in from the phone or just doing the show from your phone because your voice is much, much deeper.
Yeah, deeper,
And
much deeper, and you sound totally different.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy and wild.
He's probably still in his pajamas. He hasn't had a chance to get coffee and wake up.
Yeah, that and it's the high altitude and sleeping next to
smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
No smoking room, and I don't wear pajamas.
Oh, George.
Lucky George. There he goes.
There's your morning visual, folks.
But we got about 3 minutes left, and we got another caller on the line, so...
we'll take it.
Can we take it?
We're supposed to pay the bills.
Well, you guys have fun.
Advertise.
Appreciate
we
it.
will. We'll be back. You guys be good.
All right, we got another caller. We're going to take that real quick. Good morning and welcome to the Gun Show. How you doing?
Hey, CJ, it's Al from Gurney.
Al, how you doing?
Good. Hey, this question's for Kirk. You know, I'm probably a lot older, but when you went to Carmel, did you have a Mr. Watson there?
Mr. Watson. Not that I can recall. I definitely wouldn't have had him as a teacher. I'm not sure if he was in the building or not. I can't recall the name. I could tell you we had a Fitzgibbons. I know he's an old timer there.
He was a math teacher. He might even have been a vice principal by that time. He's since passed away. He was at St. Mary's. He taught at St. Mary's. He was my Ritalin because if you messed up in school, he'd take you out in the hall and slap you in the face. No problem.
But that didn't happen
too often, right? He's about a 260-pound, 6'3" man.
There you go.
Yeah, he had no issue. So that's the Ritalin.
That was back in the good old days. Yeah, that was their form of Ritalin. You know, you want Prozac? Come here, I'll give you a Prozac.
Yep, and he had a 2x6 board that had holes drilled into it, so it sucked the meat in if he paddled you.
There you go.
So that's what people need. Kids would straighten out.
It'd clean things up a little bit, I think. But
yep, 2 years in the military after you graduate wouldn't hurt either.
No.
4 years reserve.
Well, Al, we appreciate it, and thanks for calling in, but we got about a minute left and one more caller, so we're going to switch over to that, and we'll have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.
Oh, we lost that caller there, but I think that gives us an opportunity to pay some bills here. Hamilton Tax here. Do you owe back taxes? Is the government garnishing your wages? Do you just plain hate the IRS? Do you have unfiled tax returns? Then I suggest you contact Hamilton Tax. They will battle the IRS for you. They are specialized in reducing your tax debts and getting your compliant. They sit down and review your IRS letters or problem, then formulate a plan to take down the IRS. Convenient Chicagoland location. You can reach them at 224-381-2660 or 911.tax. Mention the Gun Show, and your first consultation is free. And I met Steven, and he's a great guy. I did my taxes with him for probably the first time, and he was able to answer a lot of questions for a first-timer.
Kurt, it probably would have helped if I had given you this commercial read before we get on the air. So we're coming up on the end of the hour, and I'm going to get our one plug-in for Five Star Firearms today, Saturday, May 19th. Today is Armed Forces Day. Stop in and get an hour of free range time to all active duty military and retired veterans. Stop in and get an hour on the range on us. And that's all we've got for today, folks. We'll see you next week on The Gun Show with more intellectual conversation. Have a good weekend.